Good evening, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the show. Did you like my new intro? Mr. Liberty has been working very hard preparing that for me, so thank you. I wouldn't be able to do it without your help. I can't believe that I've been streaming for so long now, and I've done it all on my own. I'm not very good with technology. I'm a little bit of a boomer, so grateful for any help that I can get. And it just so happens Mr. Liberty is a sound engineer and a musician, so he's come in very handy. That's not why I married him, though. It's one of the reasons I do like his singing. He's such a talent, and I'll post some more videos of him singing his tunes with his guitar soon. Always love it when I get the chance to sit down and have a sing along with Mr. Liberty. So, hello, welcome to the show. Sorry I didn't make my show last night. I love doing my Sunday night shows. It gives me something to look forward to on a Sunday when you get the Sunday blues. But I had the Sunday blues quite bad yesterday. It was just one of those weeks where everything that went bad and worse. And it just got to the point where I was a bit demoralized and just couldn't see the value in all the work that I've done. I've dug myself out of that thought pattern. I know once you get stuck in that downward spiral, it's very hard to climb back up. And I've been in worse positions over the years, that's for sure. So it was just one of those things after everything that happened with my Firearms Forum town hall and the legal action fundraiser that I'm still trying so hard to raise all that money to launch that legal action in WA. And I've just come up against all these barriers from the people, power and money in the don't want to help when they're in and it just got to the point last week that I didn't really know if I want. Got to the point yesterday where I didn't want to do anything, didn't want to talk to anyone except spend time with my dad. So I'm back. Happy Monday. I am channeling my mate, Marge Torre, in the United States with his Black Guns Matter. Yes, it's not Black Lives Matter. It's Black Guns Matter. So he's got a fantastic organization over there in Philadelphia where he has a solutionary center, it's called, and he teaches Americans, particularly African Americans, about their rights and how to use firearms in self-defense situations. But it's not just that. He's very holistic in his approach. He talks to people about civics, understanding the political process. He calls shooters in America can be political liabilities because they're not politically engaged and they're not following what's going on with their politicians. So he's very active in educating people about that and also about healthy eating and the gym. And no, the firearm is not the first thing you should turn to in a situation. You should try and de-escalate and be physically fit too. So here's one of my heroes. I did get to meet him when I was in the States last year, had a chat with him. That interview's up on my YouTube. He's such an inspiring person, so smart. I've learnt so much from him. So I'm challenging him tonight. Marge Touré, Black Guns Matter. Look him up if you haven't seen or heard of him before. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I have a bit to get through tonight, but I did want to make this stream more about the questions that people have. Mr. Liberty says I get very carried away with my rants, and it's not that I'm not saying anything intelligent, but he thinks answer the questions of the people more. And of course, this is what it's about. It's about bringing you information, trying to help you understand the political process, what liberty means, why I care so much about firearms. So any questions you have, I know we have the election coming up in Western Australia not long now, the 8th of March. I spoke to some political parties over there today. They're busy preparing their how to vote cards, which is such an important piece of the election process, especially in the lower house with the preferences. So keep an eye out, and I'm hoping I'll be able to do a live stream from WA to go through some of the lower house preference deals and how to vote cards so you understand who you're voting for. Preferences don't matter as much in the upper house anymore. since Labor abolished the group voting ticket, and they still have that in Victoria. They did have it in WA up until 2021, but because of the election of the Daylight Savings Representative Wilson Tucker, I think he only got 92 votes. That was Glenn Drury, the preference whisperer. That's his biggest claim to fame. I told him he should get it printed on a T-shirt. So that's why that's no longer in play in WA. It is a one vote in the upper house across the whole state now. So your preferences are not as big an issue there. It is the lower house where you really have to be careful who you're preferencing, because there's still deals going on as we speak. Very busy time in politics. I'm glad to be a step removed from that. I ran for the Senate in 2022, as I've spoken about before, and it's a very stressful time. So my heart goes out to all the parties and candidates in WA. I will be there. I will be there next week. So this will be my last live stream from my dad's gun room. It's kind of bittersweet, feeling a little bit emotional tonight after everything that's gone on the past few months since I've been here, spending time with my family in South Australia and working so hard for the future of Western Australia to try and help my people there, especially the shooters and hunters and farmers who are staring down the barrel of some pretty scary gun laws that are due to come into effect on the 1st of April. So I'm still plugging away at my, I'm losing my voice already. Damn, I usually peter out at about an hour, but I have been on the phone a lot again today, so I apologize. Yes, so back in WA on the 24th of February, I'm hitting the road tomorrow, beginning that long journey back. I've got a few detours along the way, so it will take me a little bit longer than normal to get back there. But I will be on the ground on the 24th of February. I cannot wait. And if you missed my live stream, I did do an emergency live stream on Thursday night, just to explain why my Firearms Forum town hall has been cancelled. You can watch that on my YouTube. I put up a clip from that live stream just talking about that, so you don't have to watch the whole thing. That's up there ready to go if you want to have a look. But it once again was clear to me that it's very hard to be politically active in the climate we're in Australia when so much of our organisations, our venues, our ranges, our charities are funded by the state, because then it puts you, your organisation, in a position where you can't be politically active and you're too scared to express your political opinion or even get involved in the democratic process, like hosting a town hall about firearms. So it's become very clear to me that it's so hard in Australia to be politically active and try and do what's best for the voters as an individual when I don't have the money of the organisations. I don't have an office or a range or a venue that I can hold events at without having to interact with other people who are not in the position that I'm in, because I've never, ever accepted a paycheck to fund anything that I do, because as soon as it comes with strings of silencing my opinion or censoring me in any way, I won't do it, because I'm a journalist. That's what I've studied at uni. That's what I wanted to be since I was 13. And my responsibility as a journalist is to be able to tell the truth to people. So I'm very careful about who I do business with. And it's left me in a position in Australia where there's not a lot of people that will do business with you when you're so outspoken against the injustices of the state, and they don't want to put their venues, organisations, ranges, whatever it is, at risk by being involved with some of the things that I want to do. So I acknowledge that that's the right. People have a right to choose what they do and don't support. My frustration comes when I'm offered support and told I have support, but the support doesn't amount to anything that can help me get what I'm trying to do done. And it puts up barriers and makes it so much harder, to the point where I had to choose to cancel that town hall because of the risks that were presented to me about going ahead with that event. So I've refunded all the tickets that I sold, and I have already booked in interviews with a lot of the candidates who were booked to speak. I had done a lot of work. This is the other disappointing thing that got me quite a bit down, was all the work that I've done in my own time. And I'm not just talking about calling the candidates and getting them to agree to come to this event, which is a huge feat in its own, because not every candidate wants to talk about firearms. For some, it is more of a niche issue. They're focused on other issues, but they agreed to come along because they saw the importance of the event, and also because I'd built relationships and coalitions with them and what they're trying to achieve. Because anyone who's trying to advance liberty, I will work with. I know we don't agree on all areas, and I know there's some things that I definitely don't agree with what some candidates are trying to achieve. But when it comes to things like advancing liberty, especially for firearm owners, which I feel is the biggest issue in WA, along with the growing police state and the trampling all over our freedoms and liberties, I feel like the police and the firearms laws, which are a part of the police portfolio, that's my focus at the moment. And that's the work that I've been doing for so long now. So I didn't get that event over the line. There are forces in this world, not always forces of evil, but forces of things going on behind the scenes that make it impossible for me to achieve what I'm trying to achieve. So I will be interviewing a lot of those candidates that I had booked in. Nick Gorian and Phil Twiz, the Liberal candidates who were coming to speak at that event. I've already booked in an interview with them. Legalised Cannabis, Dr. Brian Walker, and the Secret Harbour candidate, Jim Matters. I'll be interviewing them on the Tuesday when I arrive in Perth Monday night. So I'm still going to do my absolute best to bring you that information from the candidates' mouths about what my Firearms Forum Town Hall was going to discuss. And in a way, it's probably better because it does give the candidates the chance to have two people on the show, and they can talk openly about what they're trying to achieve without having to be given time limits on how long they can answer a question, which is what the format of the town hall had to be, because I had 6 candidates. So it wouldn't be enough to go through all the issues that I feel the people deserve to hear from those candidates. So I'm ready to go with those interviews. I'm still trying to get a hold of my shooters, fishers and farmers mates. They drew number 2 on the ballot. Yes, I spoke about that Thursday night, ballot draw Thursday. So they're in a great position to get one of their candidates, Stuart Austell, elected. I wouldn't say that it's down tools. You still should be doing everything you can to campaign. So I'm hopeful to have them on the show as well the week that I'm in Perth. I'm hoping to do it at my old gun range. I think that would be very fitting. I actually did a live stream from my gun range in Perth when I ran for the Senate. So hoping they'll have me back. I have a great relationship with those boys at Lone Rangers where I used to shoot. So I'm still pushing ahead with what I'm trying to achieve. I've had to change tack, change direction, do things in a different way to achieve my outcomes, but I'm nothing but nimble in my life. I've had to change directions and plans very quickly because of some of the situations I've found myself in, not just because of shooting organisations. I know I've been going pretty hard on them, especially with my memes. I've been busy at the meme shop. I hope people appreciate them. I know not everyone will, but you got to have a laugh at them, right? So yes, still pushing ahead with what I'm trying to do, despite the opposition and some of the things I've had to deal with from the shooting orgs. And now, like I said, it hasn't just been them. I've had to deal with this from political parties too, especially in WA after the Senate campaign. During my Senate campaign, I was nearly disendorsed because I ran a pro-firearms campaign. Yes, to my American listeners, you heard that right. The Libertarian Party of Australia were talking about disendorsing their Senate candidate because she was too pro-gun. That's what I had to deal with during that campaign. But shortly after that election, I was removed from the leadership entirely and basically kicked out of being involved in leading the party, despite being the leader for the election campaign and doing pretty well. I got about 2% of the vote with a shoestring budget and not much time to prepare other candidates. former Premier Campbell Newman up in Queensland. He ran on that Senate ticket for the Liberal Democrats too. He got about 2.3% with much bigger budget and profile than me. And David Limerick, of course, in Victoria, from memory, got about 2.1, 2.2. So I was proud of my efforts in that election, especially when I didn't have as much time and money. And I did have some great volunteers. I did the hard work getting people together. I think that's a lot of people say I'm very good at bringing people together. I put on a good party too. So I'm it was great to be able to meet so many people in WA during my time as the party leader and the lead Senate candidate, and just inspire people and have people help me too. So that was really disappointing when I wasn't welcome back in the party of David Leyonhjelm, and then shortly after they changed their name to the Libertarian Party, and they've gone down their direction. So it's not just shooting organisations that can hurt you and who can get in the way or do things. Sometimes I honestly think that it has felt a few times like these people just wish I didn't exist, or wish I didn't speak, or wish I would just go away. Like, why is she even still here? Especially after the number of times that I've felt like I've been buried, to be honest. But I'm still here. I'm still going. I do have my bad days like Sunday where it all gets a bit much, and I just needed that time to walk myself off the cliff, so to speak, figuratively, not literally. There are a few cliffs around here, but no, I would never do that to my dad. Never, ever. I'm here to live my life, and life is such a blessing. So when it gets tough like that, I'll do everything I can to bounce back as quickly as I can. So I'm back. Happy Monday night. I'm on the Cooper's Green Tins from South Australia. I grew up on these, well, when I was old enough to drink. So cheers to my last live stream in South Oz here in my dad's gun room, and I'll get into some questions now. So I did have a question pre-show from Des P. Hi, Kate, a question in advance. Firearms which will be banned. Is it a legal requirement that the government pays compensation for these firearms or not? Hearing all sorts. Thank you. Yes, great question, Des. So just to go back in 1996 when they announced the buyback, I call it confiscation because you can't buy back something you never owned. There is a clause in the Constitution that states that if the state seizes private property, they must be paid fair market value, a fair price. So back in 96 when that happened, the federal government had to pay the market prices that the firearms that they bought back were worth. The states do not have to do that when they do confiscation of firearms. So you would have seen when the buyback, I hate using that word because it's confiscation by the use of force of the state. You would have seen that table that they put out, which had valuation of the firearms, and they did it by firearms under 7 years and over 7 years. And that wasn't even the age of the firearm. It was when it had been registered in WA. So any firearm registered within the last 7 years, pistol, rifle, or shotgun, they broke it up into action, was worth, they were going to pay a set amount, and any older than 7 years, as in registered longer than 7 years, was also going to be paid a different amount. So it was not market value. And I remember clearly a gentleman messaged me and said one of his rifles was worth 10 grand and the state was only looking at it giving him about 750. And this also does not include any of the scopes or accessories that were on the firearm. They were not going to pay you a cent for that. It was just the firearms based on when it was registered and the time, and this is your price. Take it or leave it. We'll take them after 1st of April anyway if you have more than the arbitrary number of firearms, 5 for hunters, up to 10 for competitive shooters. That's the card we were dealt with in Western Australia. So great question, and that's why in WA they do not have to pay market value like the federal government did back in 1996, and that's another reason why people are so upset, because you're putting us in a corner now. You're saying we're going to take your private property and we're not even going to pay you what it's worth based on the market price. Take it or leave it, and we'll take it if you exceed those arbitrary limits after April 1. This is what democracy looks like in Western Australia. So I did see Legalised Cannabis has put out a press release saying that they want the government to reinstate that buyback plan. I haven't looked at the details. I would hope that they're pushing for fair market prices. But honestly, my solution is to leave us the hell alone and let us own as many firearms as we want, as long as we are not a criminal, as long as we are a peaceful person. That should be the end of the conversation. We shouldn't even be talking about another gun confiscation scheme in 2025 when we've had no major incidents of firearms, especially in WA, by licensed firearm owners. And the one that we did, the Floriat killer, was known to police, and he should have had his guns taken off him well before that devastating incident that happened there. So that's my answer. I hope that helps. I know it does get a bit confusing with different laws at federal and state levels, but that's why there is a huge difference in how the federal government went about that buyback scheme versus to how WA have gone about it. And to me, it was just another kick in the guts. I looked at that table and I just thought, they don't care. They don't care that people are hurting. They don't care that people have $10,000 rifle that they're now being forced to flood the market with. The prices will, of course, be affected because there's people flooding the market to try and sell their guns. I've said, please do not hand one gun into the state. Send them interstate to a mate or someone who can hold on to them until we can get rid of these bloody gun laws. Please, we do not want to see any more firearms owned by peaceful people blown up. Did you see that on September 11 of all days? WA government took all these firearms that had been handed back as part of that gun confiscation program and literally blew them up in the desert on September 11. I mean, the optics were just shocking. I remember seeing it and just feeling sick once again at the mentality of the state government, that it wasn't enough that you put people in a position where they had to hand over their firearms. Some of these firearms that would have personal value as well. It's not just about monetary, it's heirloom firearms too. And just to have them handed in and then next minute you turn on the news and there's a big explosion. This is what they think of you. That's a very clear message. I was disgusted. So that's my thoughts on gun confiscation. And by the way, I've said this before, that's why I'm so against registration of firearms too. I think the only amount of information a police officer or the authorities need is if you are a licensed firearm owner or not. It does not matter. They do not need to know if you own 1 or 20 firearms. The only information that they need to know when going to your property, if they deserve to know any, which is another conversation for another day, should be sufficient that, yes, there are a firearms license. You do not need to know what private property we own or what our purpose of use is. If we're a peaceful person that has passed the fit and proper persons test and proven that we can own a license, why do you need to regulate us even harder and spend millions, billions of dollars on a registration system that is still not able to be searchable? I mean, some of these registration systems, I remember when I worked at SSAA, it was just a junk data in, junk data out. I've had people message me to say, the cops just showed up to do an inspection at my house and asked where this particular firearm is, and I sold it 5 years ago and gave them the paperwork, and yet they're coming to see if I still have it because they haven't updated their system. That's the kind of thing we're in. And you just think about the number of police hours that is spent on bureaucracy and paperwork, and you're just wondering, what are we getting in return as the public who pays the taxes to fund these people, these bureaucrats? Where's the return on investment? We don't need them. The information you should have is if we're a licensed firearm owner or not, End of story. So, rhino cow hunting. Hi, Kate. So I have to read off this bloody phone and I don't have my glasses. So excuse me while I look like a boomer reading this, but such is the times that I am living in. Hi, Kate. Genuine philosophical question here. When do you think it's time to call quits on a fight? I live in SA like you used to. They've banned bow hunting and are exterminating all the game here. They haven't done anything worse firearms wise, but they will eventually. I'm considering a move to New Zealand. When do you think it's time to call quits on a fight? I've been asking myself that question quite a lot lately, and I'll never, ever walk away from a fight. I remember very clearly my dad said to me when I was younger, when I was going out for the first times, he said, "Never start a fight, but if you get in a fight, make sure you finish it. Do not walk away." So I don't really have a choice. I have to keep going, no matter what cards I'm dealt, and I can't give up on the fight. I think I'm white pilled now. If anyone knows Michael Malice, he's got a book called The White Pill, where he talks about how we should still have hope because we still have a way we can win this fight, and how he gives the example of the Berlin Wall falling in East Berlin, East and West, and he talks about they didn't think, those people living on the communism side didn't feel like that would ever end, and yet they still found freedom. And it takes a lot of people to fight and a lot of leaders to stand up. And I keep telling myself those kinds of things. There has been times in history where the good guys have won, and we just have to keep up the hope. Otherwise we become nihilistic and black pilled, it's called these days. So once you get to that point, it's very hard to walk yourself back into being motivated to fight. So I give myself little pep talks about, even if you just change one person's mind or you make them see the light on something, especially for me, firearms, or if you point them in the direction of a book and then they're on this path to understanding liberty and eventually fighting for it. It's incremental steps as well. You're not going to change the world overnight, especially if you're just one person. But what does it take? I posted that on Sunday night when I was in my depression spiral. How many people does it take to fight for liberty? And that can look like different things. The fight doesn't have to be like I'm trying to do all these things and still trying to work with shooting organizations when there's so much at play against me, not just the culture of the organizations or some of the men in these positions, but also the other pressures they have, like taking funding from the state so they can't be as political or political at all. These are all the things that this is what the Australian political landscape looks like, and it's hard. It is so hard, and it gets to the point where you think, I'm not going to change anything. I should just go back to working at a makeup counter, which is what I had to do in Perth after I couldn't get a job following my Senate campaign, because I was enemy of the state. So I think there are times when you should back away from the fight and take time for yourself. And I've tried to do that a bit more as I've gotten older. And then I think there are also times where you weigh up everything that's in front of you, everything that's been in the past, and make a decision that's best for you and your family. And that's what I'm looking at now too. I'll keep going ahead with what I'm doing in WA with my legal action and interviewing the candidates and being involved on the ground in the lead up to the 8th of March. I'm definitely going to do that. I was always coming back to WA, so I'm committed to that fight, regardless of everything that's happened and how I've been treated, not just by the shooting organisations there, but my former party, the Libertarian Party, how I was treated there and why I'm not involved with them anymore, when I could very well have been the lead candidate if I didn't have the political opposition and the factions that have taken over that party doing everything they can to keep me out, which that's fine. I'm not going to sit at the table who pretend to be my friend but are actually my enemy, trying to achieve something that I'm not ever ever going to be a part of. So you do what's right for you. I know a lot of people are considering moving from Australia. I had another message today from an army veteran who kindly reached out to me and shared his story about his wife and him leaving WA during those dark years. So I feel like we are going to see a lot of Australians leave, if not to come back and save our country, because if I ever left, I would be thinking about Australia every day, because this is the country my grandfather fled the fascists for, and I do not want to see it fall to fascism in 2025, which is what's happened in WA. So we'll see what happens, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. I also remind myself that too when I'm trying so hard to get things done. You can't control other people or the time frame, but you can do, as long as you do something every day that will help your situation or help others. I think that's the best we can do at this rate, because this is a position we're in Australia at the moment. It's going to be a hard, bloody slog to bring this country back. That's for sure. Oh, cheers, Don Brook. Cooper's Pale Ale, my drink. Yes, cheers. I've got Mr. Liberty onto them too. He's from Victoria, so he didn't have these growing up, or they were the classier beers, I've heard him say. I can't wait to be back in WA. I'm a big fan of Single Fin, the brewery in Freo. I'll definitely be going there for a few pints. And I don't mind Little Creatures either, so can't wait to have some WA beers. And of course, Matt Sauce ginger beer. That's my ultimate. So William said, so do you reckon what's happened in WA will happen Australia-wide? Yes. Yes, I do. We saw the other week, if you missed it, the Gun Control Australia report in the news that was pushing for firearm limits on every Australian, not just what's happened in WA. They got that idea from the WA laws, which, as I said, come into effect on April 1. So this is what Western Australian shooters are looking down the barrel of at the moment, is if they own more than 5, if you're a hunter, or more than 10 if you're a competitive shooter, there are options to go on a collector's license, but that comes with strings attached, including you have to have deactivated firearms, so you can only take them out of the safe to hold them, as one shooter said to me, which is just obscene. So I do think that the laws in WA will spread. That's just the reality, because jurisdictions will point to WA and say, well, they've now got the toughest gun laws in Australia. We need to do that. Why do you need to do that? Because they've done it, and we cannot be seen to be soft on firearms. And this is the other issue we have with WA that I don't even know if the shooting organisations have turned their mind to. It's all very well to say a party like the Nationals are going to tear up the firearms laws and write their own, and it will be rainbows and butterflies and everyone will be happy again. No politician is going to want to be seen to be soft on firearm laws, because they know it's political suicide. Gun laws in Australia are now at the point where it's going to be very hard to reverse anything, even if they are obscene, even if they don't do anything to influence public safety, even if they hamper public safety, like we saw with the doxing incident in WA. It directly put the public at risk with that incident. So you are going to see these laws spread, and that's my fear for the rest of Australia. That's why I've launched this legal action, because the only way to stop it is through the courts, because it's going to be very hard. Yes, hopefully with the election and with what happens in the upper house, and if we have some great candidates there who are on our side, and I'll be, in the lead up to the election, I'll be showing you who they are so you know how to vote and who you should vote for in the upper house. You're going to see these laws be sent to a review, which will take 4 years, if it even gets to the stage where they agree to a review. It depends how many Labor, Greens, Animal Justice, they might get a seat too. It really depends on the makeup of the parliament, what we will actually get. So that's why I've been saying, where is the legal challenge? Why has no one gone to a lawyer and got this official advice called a letter of opinion from the King's Counsel, one of the highest lawyers you can get? Why has no one gone down that path when we've seen these laws come out now? We've had plenty of time to scramble up. Well, the organizations don't have to scramble up money like I'm doing. I'm going around shaking the tin, trying to get enough money for this legal action. It's very hard as one person to raise this amount of money. And last I checked, I was over just a third of the way there, I think. Like, it's still not enough because lawyers need to get paid. They're not going to do this out of the goodness of their hearts, although they have done it at a discounted rate, out of the goodness of their hearts for the fight. So I've managed to do that on my own. But where is the legal challenge? Because once you get a judge ruling that a law is invalid or it breaches something like discrimination laws, which I've talked about before, about the physical ability requirements on the new WA license, physical ability, this is human rights stuff now. You can't discriminate against anyone for physical ability or inability in Australia, yet it's in the law in WA. That's a blatant thing that we could challenge. But the shooting organizations have not gone to lawyers, or they're not telling us, and no one has shared with me that any of the organizations have got this high-level legal advice, because they've all been focused on the political solution and giving money to candidates. So what does that leave for the people when this is an avenue? In America, this is what their organizations do. Yes, they're involved in the political process. Yes, they give money to candidates over there, like we've seen here in WA. There was a story in Friday's West Australian about what one organisation there has been doing with their funding. Where's the legal action challenge? That to me is a big hole in the, this is a battlefield, right? You don't just have one area covered, you have to cover all your bases. So that's something that I've been working on, to try and raise enough money to get this before a court, get a judge to rule that's invalid, or that breaches this, or this wasn't done in accordance with the law here. But that takes money, and no shooting organisation in WA has donated to me, despite me asking. And so that raises another question. Why wouldn't they? I'm not the one I've waived my client privilege for the advice. It's not to benefit me. I'm not a firearm owner in WA anymore. Since I left, I had to transfer my firearm to my dad here in South Australia because I've been traveling. So I don't actually have any, it's of no benefit to me at all why I'm doing this, because the legal advice won't help me, because I cannot be the person to take it to court, because I'm not affected anymore, because my guns are not in that state. I'm doing this so the people have the information and the knowledge from the legal side of town, who are surprised that they haven't had shooters knocking on their door, because shooters have all been directed, hang until the election when we vote Labor out and when the Nationals will save us. To me, that is, I don't even know what to describe it as. I don't think it's being honest about the situation, because I think we will still see a reduced Labor government after the election, because it will take a bloody miracle for that red wave to be reversed to the extent that we have Liberal national government, if they can even form coalition again, considering the relationship that those two parties have with each other in WA. They're not in a coalition like they are in Queensland as the LNP. They've got issues too. So why are you telling the people that it's purely a political solution and everything? All eyes are on the 8th of March and put Labor last. All eyes should not be on the 8th of March. We should also be turning to the courthouse, the other area of democracy in this country, the justice system, so we can take that fight there. So I'm still trying my absolute bloody hardest to get this fundraiser to the point where I can start work. I have been doing work for free. I can't help myself. When there's injustice, I'll just go ahead and do it, and then wonder why I can't afford to feed myself dinner because, I haven't got paid for any of this, but I've just worked 12-hour day. I'm very bad at that habit. I can't do it anymore. I have responsibilities. I have a husband, and I have to find a house to live in and all of those things that you do when you're married. So I can no longer operate like that. And I probably shouldn't anyway. I would not recommend it. It's not a healthy life. And that's probably why it's affected my health so much over the years, working for free and not being able to have dinner at the end of the day. So I'm doing everything I can for legal action. I am booked in to see my lawyers on the 10th of March after the election. If I have enough money, I can go full steam ahead on that. So if you can donate, please, if you can share it around, anything you can do to help, please, please help, because as soon as I get this advice, I can share it with all of you and we can go gangbusters from there and not have to rely on our politicians who will not be talking about gun laws on the first day. They just won't. And we cannot afford to wait any longer. We cannot afford to live under those laws for 1 second more than we have to. 1 second more. So that's where I'm at with that. So Collide Rule said, did lots of people sell their firearms interstate for better prices? I'm not sure. I know a lot of, this is other scary news that I've heard, a lot of the interstate gun shops will not be dealing with WA anymore. It's just too much of a risk, the market there, because they will have limits. This is also interference in the free market, right, as well. If it's any sort of property. So in this case, it's firearms. But when the government interferes in the free market and puts caps on the number of items of anything that you can own, this is when you see the prices just go out of control. And the gun shops interstate, they don't want to deal with them. They do not want to deal with what's happening in WA. So the cost of transporting firearms out of WA is obscene. It's still an issue. It was an issue when I worked for SSAA National back in 2013, and I dealt with Ron Bryant, the president of SSAA WA then, and he and I worked on this issue. I found a clause in the Australian Constitution that says every citizen has a right to Australia Post, basically. They're being able to send and receive mail. So we went down that route. I think he had Ross Williamson involved in that too, so they were looking at that. But WA has been notoriously bad for firearm owners, firearm shops and dealers to do business. That's why they've only had the SHOT Show there once in Perth, because it was ran at a loss because of the tyranny of distance and the cost of transporting firearms to that state. So this is what we're up against in WA too. You put all of that on top of, now you've got restrictions on how many guns you can own. Why would firearms dealers even bother when they know that they are capped on the number of firearms they can sell? The government has intervened in an industry which will have huge repercussions. The only thing that the gun shops will be able to sell is 10 mil safes, because that's what you need as a requirement if you own 2 or more handguns. And they're struggling to get them in at the moment. You cannot find many of them around Australia. So this is what we're dealing with, the domino effect. They change this and everything keeps falling. So I wouldn't, if you see WA firearms on the market, that's why. Or if you know someone there and you want to help them because they're probably tearing their hair out, not wondering what they're going to do come April 1, give them a call and see how you can help, even if it's just transferring ownership for a few years until we can get these laws reversed. See, all these effects. That's why I stay up late at night thinking about all of this. Collide Rule again, what do you think about New Zealand rewriting its Firearms Act and potentially bringing back semi-auto rifles and abolish the register? Do you ever think similar things could happen here? The coalition government over there has the Libertarian Party in it. Yes, they have the ACT Party. it's not entirely libertarian, but they do have some libertarian values, including a lot of their firearm policies. Nicole McKee is the minister in charge of that portfolio in New Zealand. I have known her for quite some time. She used to be involved in COLFO, which I'm going to stuff up what it means, but it was the New Zealand equivalent of one of our organizations. So I got to meet her back in the day, and she was always such a great temperament, very smart, and she listened. She listened to what people had to say, and that's why I'm so proud of her that she's in the position she is in New Zealand now for the ACT Party as the minister in charge of firearms, and she's just done some great work. She's consulting the people. That's the first thing she said when she got elected. The laws that came in under Labor, she said the consultation was not a two-way street like we've seen in WA. So she reopened the whole thing, and she's come up with workable solutions for the people of New Zealand. And they have such a big hunting culture too, like we do. I've been over to New Zealand a few times. I have cousins in Taranaki that I've been out shooting with, dying to get over there again to go hunting with him. They have some fun stuff over there. So it's been great to see New Zealand defend their traditions and their liberties, because that's what the people want. They did not want the heavy hand of the state changing the culture by bringing in laws which just made it so bloody hard for the people to continue about their business peacefully. So I'm so glad to see what's happening in New Zealand. It does give me hope here. The electoral system is different in New Zealand, so there's a higher chance of parties like ACT getting up. It's very hard here, especially federally. And that's why you have seen, and you will see at the next federal election, a reduction in the number of minor parties, particularly in the Senate. There's not many in the lower house anyway. It's always been traditionally hard for minor parties to get elected in the lower house around Australia. But the Senate, I remember this very clearly. I was working for Senator David Leyonhjelm back in 2018 when Labor and Liberal conspired together to bring in changes to the Senate quota voting system, which resulted in the number of minor parties senators being elected. That's when he lost his seat. Senator Pauline Hanson only just got back in at the last election. If I was her, I'd be very worried about the upcoming election, because I know there's been quite a bit of backlash on her for her stance on the hate speech laws by abstaining instead of taking a strong stand in favour of free speech, which is a fundamental human right. That's why it's the First Amendment in America, and the second was the Second Amendment to defend your right to free speech. So just keep an eye out at the federal election. That I think you will see again a reduction in the number of minor parties, and you will see we won't be able to do things like New Zealand, because the system is against us. It's against the people, and that's by design. This is why I keep saying that the system is corrupt, because they have made it that way to protect their own interests of their own major parties. And they want to see smaller voices, smaller dissenting voices, like Gerard Rennick from Queensland. He's running for his own party. I don't think he'll get in. I'd love him to get in, but I don't think he has a chance either. And I remember Senator David Leyonhjelm and his advisor at the time saying, we probably won't see a libertarian in the Senate again because of the laws. So just keep that in mind. That's also why I'm not investing my time and energy in the fight federally, not just because how I was treated by the Libertarian Party after my Senate campaign and during, getting threats of disendorsement when you're standing at the police minister's office thinking you're doing a great job is quite something that I still feel sick thinking about. Heaven forbid I stand up for the people and firearm freedoms, which is a libertarian principle, but that's the times in which we live. So just be very aware about the landscape will not be able to change in Australia until we have systematic change. And the only way, for the record, that I can see our way out of this is when Australia becomes a republic and we have a constitution which is written for the people, by the people, and we have a referendum on every section of that constitution. The First Amendment this, Second Amendment that, Third Amendment that, a constitution written for the people, by the people, not the one we have now, which is written about state and federal government powers. That's what it is, about giving powers to politicians to control us. It is not written down the lens of protecting the people from their government, which the American Constitution is. So that's when I think we'll be able to turn things around in Australia. But will they even give us that opportunity to vote on a constitution written for the people, by the people? I don't think they will do anything to give us back any power. So, sorry, that's a bit of a black pill thing, but who knows? Revolutions, peaceful revolutions, things can change. We just need enough people to say we've had enough and this is what we want from our government. Oh, Catherine. Hi, Catherine, again. Thanks for joining my show Thursday night. One of my few listeners. Apparently, Thursdays are bad for live streams. Everybody's on the air or airwaves Thursday, so I'll make sure I have Thursdays to myself from now on. But Catherine said, Amber Jade Sanderson, who's the WA Health Minister, wants to close all private drug rehabilitation facilities, including Shalom House. I must have missed that, because Shalom House is actually near where my sister's living currently and my last place of address before I hit the road. And she said that they do some great work there. So how can a state government minister want to close down private? We are not talking about state-funded rehabilitation facilities. I don't believe that the state should be funding things like this. I think private businesses, 100%. I think most things the private sector would do a better job than any government service. So the fact that she wants to shut down a rehabilitation centre like Shalom House, terrifying. Why would you want to take away the opportunity for people to change their lives and get their health back on track and become a part of society again, when they're not reliant on destructive drugs that a lot of these people are taking, or if they just need that time to, they might have gone down a spot. I've been watching Breaking Bad, so I'm just thinking about that scene in my head of that. If you haven't seen it, I won't ruin it, but if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about, an overdose scene. Why would you want to shut down a private rehabilitation facility? That, to me, is just evil, 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 evil. Yeah, see, Collide Rule said history shows that authoritarianism never wins, never give up. Yes, that's the message. You will go through dark times, but liberty always prevails. And Shooter Down Under, g'day, Shooter Down Under, my regular listener. If there's any chance of hope, I've changed many of the minds of many Aussies on our gun laws, and there's evidence that support has declined. Good. Good on you, Shooter Down Under. And that's what we need to do, not just about firearms, but any issue that you feel people in Australia are not getting the right information about because they just watch lamestream media, as my uncle calls it, or if they don't have the time to read and go through other venues for information like podcasts. So many great podcasts out there where you hear things you never would have thought of, and that's an important thing. I think that will give us hope is we have the access to information on our phones now, on the internet, and we are living in such a connected world. And yes, that's why governments try to shut down things like free speech and control us. There are always ways. Free Ross, if anyone knows Ross Ulbricht, who created that underground website so people could exchange things on the free market. There are always ways that we can still communicate with each other, even though things are against us. So thank you for doing what you can to educate our fellow Aussies. And I also find that when I have chat with people who are a bit unsure, or even if they're made up their mind, there are a few things you can say just to point them in the right direction. And you can never lead someone the whole way, but just that step in the right direction, and then who knows, they're on the journey towards liberty and away from commies and all that authoritarian garbage. Don Brook, people fled the Soviet Union, the Eastern Bloc. When do you give up on the fight? When you realize that the majority of the citizens in the country you live in agree with the government. Yeah, and that's something that I talk about a lot with Mr. Liberty. We have some great chats about, especially when we spent so much time in America, and the people there who just live and breathe liberty. They know that they have rights because rights are God-given. They are not prescribed to you by the state. You were born with these rights. And a perfect example that I always give is the right to defend your life. You have a right to life, and that right extends to defending your own life, which is why the self-defense laws in this country are abhorrent. I've been in situations where I'm a trained pistol shooter and I could not use my gun on an attacker. I had to try and run away and cower until I could call for help, and harm had already been done. And we're talking about in my own house, to be made to feel defenseless and a victim when I know that I could have defended myself if I had the legal ability to be able to do that without getting charged with murder when I was the one who was under duress. The self-defense laws in this country has made us a nation of victims, and I get so fed up with the domestic violence debate all the time. It's more money for services, more money for frontline police, more money for this, more education campaigns for men because all men are evil. That's the message that the government puts out. Not once has the debate ever considered how about we give the people the power to defend themselves in their own homes and their own properties. And I even wrote a submission to the Royal Commission into Domestic Violence here in South Australia, where I am at the moment, and where one of the domestic violence incidents occurred in my youth. And they didn't even mention my whole paper that I wrote about self-defense. They didn't even mention it in their reports about all the submissions they got, all the public hearings they held. When I asked if I could come along to a public hearing, we're not necessarily hearing from all victims, was the response I got. And then I went on the website and they had been very, very specific about the type of people, the DEI that they wanted to get and who they were going to talk to. And I didn't tick those boxes. So my voice is not as important as these who have certain characteristics which people cannot control. So that's the state of that in our country, that's another big thing that I've marched array, Black Guns Matter, you have the right to self-defense. That does not mean I want every Australian armed and ready to go. I want people to be able to defend themselves through de-escalation tactics, through non-lethal means of self-defense like pepper spray, which is legal to buy in WA, but when it comes to using it, it's a grey area. I had a message before from a guy who listened to my interview with Dr. John Lott Jr., who's a criminologist in America, and all he studies is gun statistics, gun crime. That's his bread and butter. And when I told him about what the state of the laws are in Australia with self-defense, he was horrified. He said, because that means that the state is making vulnerable people reliant on the state to save them, when we know that that's physically impossible. It's just not possible. And so he also said it was evil that we have been put in this position by our governments. And that's one thing, if I could change overnight, I would give every Australian the right to defend their life, because I do not want anyone to have to go through what I had to go through as a person who can defend myself with a firearm, but knowing if I did, I would be the one put behind bars. So sorry, Don, I went on a side rant, but that's something that I have spoken to Mr. Liberty about, is how many Australians actually agree with the way that we're being governed. And it does feel like the majority do. And when we came back from America, we were very surprised with some of the conversations we had from people who just watch the normie news or aren't connected to what's going on and are just trying to get by. And I get that too, like detaching, taking the blue pill, if you will. But it's going to get to a point when every Australian will be affected to the point where we're going to have to need some change. So that's human nature. We're not going to worry about a problem because there's so much going on in the world. We don't have the capacity to worry about a problem until it's at our doorstep. But if you want enough people and just get them to see things through a different lens and critical thinking, and this will lead to this, and people might start to wake up sooner, but we will see. And Catherine said, you quit when you don't give a shit about future generations. That's the other thing that I've found really hard to deal with as well, because a lot of the shooting organizations, but also political parties and people who run them, are typically the older generation who have the time to volunteer and the money because they lived in the golden age of Australia when they could buy a house and all those things that my generation and younger just seems out of reach these days. So I really implore our leaders in any field, any organisation, sit at the table with politicians. Or if you're a politician, are you just thinking about your 4-year or 3-year election cycle, which is obscene because you're not, if you're a libertarian, the thought of being a politician should make you sick. I remember David Meinhelm said this to me very clearly. He said, I didn't want to be a politician, but I was the best candidate they had. And the next minute I'm a senator and I hate it every day because I see the government and how much they trample on our liberties, and libertarians, we just want to be left the bloody hell alone. And he's one voice in this big political system. And yes, you can get the message and philosophy out, but you're never going to bring down the state, especially when you work in politics. You have to do that work outside of the parliament. So I get very, very concerned when I hear libertarians say they want to be elected, because I didn't particularly want to be a Senate candidate, but I felt I was the best person for that role at the time. And so did my party and the people in my party. So that's how I ended up a candidate. But I see politicians as the ruling class who are in it for themselves, who don't listen to the people, who are interested in their own self-interest, their own donors, their own factions, and their own agendas, and not the people. There's not enough people that go into politics to serve the people anymore. It's so self-serving. So self-serving. So you will never see me sit down with a politician who I know or know enough to think that that's why they're in it. I will never have any of those kind of people on my show. So, oh, Carly Murphy, thank you. I needed to hear that tonight. Not sure what part you're referring to because I'm ranting away, but whatever I said, I'm glad that it's helped you. And sometimes we just need a bit of a pep talk. I definitely did yesterday. Well, Shooter Down Under said, my family came to Australia after the government was overthrown and martial law was imposed. It's a massive kick in the guts to see how much freedom we've lost and how many have given it away. That's the hard thing I find hard to comprehend too, is that my nonno fled fascist Italy after World War II, and he came to this country and he just loved it because Italians, good work ethic, will work hard, very focused on family, very smart in terms of buying property and building things for their kids, very family focused. That's the Italian way. And they love the freedom here, especially compared to Italy, where everything was done to serve the state. And that's what I'm seeing in WA. Everything is to benefit the state rather than the individual. So one of those things that I'm grappling with is, if I was to leave Australia, what would my grandfather think? Because he caught that long boat ride from bloody Italy to come here, and build a new life for us. Fantanel, like my family are the only Fantanels in Australia too. So that's something I understand how you feel. And I know a lot of first, second, even third generation Aussies struggle with that too, seeing the country that our families fled war-torn countries for to give us a new life and a chance to live free and advance and have our own families and have enough to live and eat and have some fun times. And it's just at the point now in Australia where that's not the reality for my generation and younger. And that is devastating to think about. Beer Burls, we need a dual process of legal and electoral avenues. I agree. That's why I'm still doing the bloody political stuff, only because I know all these candidates and I was so involved in politics for so long that I can't help myself. And I still hope that I can have an influence on especially the upper house. That's my focus for the WA election. But the legal action, that's, like I said before, it just blows my mind that I know there's another guy who did a fundraiser to look at the High Court challenge, and he's been doing some great work. Mine is not looking at High Court. That's a different level of court. Mine are WA courts. So he's looking at the High Court constitutional stuff, which is much more expensive, more time consuming. I couldn't even begin to think where I would start to raise enough money to be able to do that. So mine is the WA court challenges, and I honestly think it's the least I can do for my people now that I'm not running in that election because of everything that's happened politically. And with me not being the leader of my old party anymore and not wanted there. So the least I can do is take this battle to the court. Kate versus the state. That's what I tell myself. Kate versus the state. Someone has to do it. It has to be you. So as long as I raise enough money, I know I'll get there. It's just hard, especially when you know that there are organisations who could just tip in the money now and I could be full steam ahead and have the first court challenge in on April 1. And it's just, this is what I mean by some people just seem to get in the way of me trying to advance liberty. And that's what gets me down, especially when they're on my own side or say that they're on my side or say that they support me or say that they align with me ideologically. And then all they seem to do is bring me down or get in the way. Very frustrating. Oh, Shooter Down Under, here's a tagline for new guns. Get your rescue guns straight from WA. Far out. Isn't that a sad sign of the time? Rescue guns. Safe sanctuaries for WA guns. Far out. That's the point that we're at now. Good one, though. Wayne Verity, well done, Kate, with the Aussie flag. Thank you, Wayne. Still a proud Aussie. Always will be. Oh, Garlando 44. G'day, mate. Me and my roommate joined the Libertarian Party this year. Ooh, what state are you in, Garlando? See, that's the other thing I have. As much as I'm not involved with the party anymore and there's a different faction and people running the show that are not aligned with Senator David Leyonhjelm or myself, he's not involved either anymore. We are the old Liberal Democrats. The Libertarian Party is not us as much as we wish it was. Depends what state you're in with who's running the show. But yeah, like if you don't know what a libertarian is, look it up. That's how I got to be in where I view things in life philosophically. I'm more of an anarchist these days. Not an anarchist like whenever I say that to my dad, he thinks of the Italians and all the violence. That's not what I mean by anarchy. Anarchy is individuals living in their own community without the state, without government telling us what to do. We can solve a lot of problems through contract laws. We don't need police. We can have private security. We can run our own communities as centrally as locally as possible without central planning of the state that comes in and ruins everything. So libertarians do believe in some level of government, and I'm at the point now in my life after working in politics so long that I don't trust anyone to have the power to rule over me, even if they say they're libertarian politician, because I've seen some of the self-interest in some of the candidates from that party that I also, that's why I don't believe in the state in any form. I think people are generally peaceful people. I think we can solve our own disputes. If we have property disputes, we can have a private arbitration to deal with things like that. If the government got out of the way and let people live in peace, I think you would find society would be a lot better place. And we can also deal with things like if someone harmed your daughter, then the father in Texas, for example, has the right to go around and deal with that person because it's a family level. It's not involving the state or any other person. This is people being responsible for their own communities and the safety in their own communities. So I'm a big believer. And Michael Malice, will put his name out there again. He's famous anarchist in America, and he does a much better job than me at explaining what this would look like in reality. So that's where I'm at politically. But if you're a member of the Libertarian Party, that's great. We don't really have very many options who to vote for federally, state level in WA. I know I'm thinking in my head, I still have to decide for my upper house vote, but I'm definitely looking at legalised cannabis WA, Shooters and Fishers Farmers Party. There are a few good liberals like Nick Gorian, who Catherine mentioned before, and Phil Twiz. Definitely be looking at them on the upper house ticket. I know liberals, I know after 1996, I never thought I'd say that again. But like I said, I've formed coalition with people who want to advance liberty. And there just so happens to be a faction in the Liberal Party in WA who align with me, especially on the gun things and other issues which will advance liberty. So I've done the work on the ground to form those coalitions and know who you can trust and who you can't. So that's who I'm looking at on the upper house at the moment. I think, Catherine, you emailed me or someone emailed me asking for upper house recommendations. I still need to have a look at the whole thing. You do have the Christians in there too, Marika, who's pushing for a review on the firearms law. So that's something I align with her on. You'll have to look at their other policies to see if that suits you. But I will be doing a show in WA, live stream about the upper house and lower house, because the how to vote cards are coming out next week, I think. Well, they have to, because pre-poll starts on Monday. So I'll be looking at that too and be doing a show on what all these preferences mean. Yeah, so Don Brooks said, I've heard that WA allows people to own and carry pepper spray for self-defense. Did you have pepper spray when you lived there, Kate? Yes. Yes, I did have pepper spray, but at the time I was attacked in my own home, I carry pepper spray in my purse, so I didn't have my handbag near me. First mistake, I suppose, not that you would think you'd be attacked in your own home. But there are also issues with using pepper spray because they have equal force laws too, like a lot of the states and territories. All of the states and territories actually have equal force laws, where if you're attacked by a person, you can only reciprocate or respond with the force that they've attacked you with. Example, if someone punches you, you can punch them back. But then, of course, a man's punch will be typically stronger than a woman's punch. See, it's not black and white. The law should be black and white so people know I can use this because I'm under attack. Doesn't matter what I use, I was under attack. That's how it should be. Castle doctrine, someone put that in the chat too. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. None of this other stuff, if depends on force, depends if it's day or night. That is a thing. In America, some states have, depending on the time, no, this is what you can do. End of story. Doesn't need to be that hard. Oh, Dilmaz85's back. Hello. I don't think you were on my show last week. Calling you out. He says every time I brought up self-defense laws during that recent DV crisis, I think we're still in a bloody DV crisis. Surprise, surprise, because the government solutions are not working and they are not listening to anyone except their DEI groups and making sure more money goes here and not solving the problem. And we'll throw in a bit of blaming all men too. That's our government at the moment. Disgrace. I got called a gun nut and I just want to own guns, and it wouldn't help women even if they had a gun because they won't shoot. This is the other cultural problem we have in Australia, because I've had a few girlfriends say to me, "Oh, I would never be able to do that, Kate. Like, wow, you're so ballsy." And I think because I've been in that situation, now I know that I wish I could have done that, because it would have not just saved my life, but this person also went on to attack another woman after me, which broke my heart when I heard that, because serial offender. But that's the state, that's what happens when they don't let us take our safety into our own hands. And so I think it would take a lot of education and things like Black Guns Matter. My mate Marge, he does special training courses for women who want to learn how to shoot or use pepper spray or learn evasive de-escalation tactics. So that's what we need to do. Like I said, I don't think tomorrow every Australian should own a gun for self-defense, only if they want to. And we do need to make sure we have the ability to train, especially women who haven't shot a gun before, what that looks like. It's not just change the law and then let's see how it goes. Excuse me. There is a lot of work that needs to go into making sure people are comfortable and they know their options and they can respond how they see fit. And Don Brooks said all Australian women join a pistol club, get your license, have the capacity to defend yourself. Well, you can't own a gun for self-defense in Australia, Don, but I do believe that people should learn how to shoot, whether that be for hunting, which I've learnt too, which is another great skill for survival, especially in a cost of living crisis. I'm living off bloody goat and venison because that's the times we live. So I think every Australian, Bob Catter has said this too. He said every boy should learn how to shoot. I think everyone not should be forced to, but be given the opportunity to learn. And with the laws going the way they are, it's going to get to the point where it's harder for us to be able to pass this skill on to our sons and daughters. So not every Australian will be able to know how to use a gun, and that's terrifying to me. Galando 44, Lady Liberty needs to come to Melbourne to save us from the commie state government. Oh, you're in Melbourne, Victoria. I was in Victoria in 2022. I worked on the state election campaign for David Limbrick. I helped him get re-elected. Unfortunately, Tim Quilty didn't get up because of preference deals that were done. So that's politics. But yes, Victoria, the People's Republic of Victoria, that is a terrifying place to see. Where I saw they're building a statue for Dan Andrews and it's going to cost $100K. I don't know if Mr. Liberty saw that. He's probably just hearing this now, so he's probably disgusted. I was disgusted too when I was in Victoria and Melbourne, especially because I used to go to Melbourne a lot in my youth from Adelaide. I used to fly. It was a 45-minute flight. We used to fly over there for girls' weekends. Had the best time. Some of the nightclubs over there, Bang, if anyone knows Bang, that's where I used to go, the emo kid in my youth. But to see that city, it just does not seem, it's almost got a Detroit feeling to it. Like it's broke and people are struggling and your taxes are through the roof, and terrible culture in the police, terrible culture with the unions and the Labor government there, which is why you'll probably never get rid of them because everyone votes Labor to keep their job, and it goes on and on and on. I really fear for Victoria. I could never live there again. Sorry, I do love visiting, especially coming to watch Carlton play. So I have been going for an hour 22. Yay, smashing it. Yeah, Frank said everybody feels safe until the day something horrible happens to them. Yeah, that's why you should always at least be prepared. Oh, yes, Garlando, you met David Limerick. Yes, I worked for him. Yeah, I did like him. He's quite a character. He's got a great sense of humor, and yeah, he's from the old Liberal Democrat days. He said he used to watch Senator David Lynham's speeches in Parliament. He was that much of a fan. So I agree. I think he's legit. I'm glad that he's still in the upper house there. God, it was such a devastating loss to lose Tim Quilty, because he was fantastic too, and he's true blue libertarian as well. So they are two great Victorian libertarians. I'm disappointed Tim Quilty is not the lead Senate candidate. He would be fantastic candidate. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Political parties, factions, power plays. That's why I'm not involved anymore. I just don't have the gumption for some of the real nasty stuff that goes on in political parties. Didn't used to be like that under Senator David Lynham. He ran a very tight ship, harsh but fair, got things done, could get people offside, but he knew what he was going to achieve, and it was for the best of the party, not ever for himself. That's the kind of people you need running parties, not people with self-interest or people you can't trust. Oh, legalise cannabis, Australia 420. Hopefully they rip the damn statue down. They don't mind ripping all the other ones down these days. Good point. The intolerant left will tear down statues of Captain Cook, but if we dare touch Dan Andrews, straight to jail. Isn't that how it works? The pigeons are waiting with anticipation for the unveiling of Dan Andrews' statue. Good one, Sheeta Down Under. Okay, I have been going for an hour and a half nearly now. I am going to wrap up. This is my last live stream from my dad's gun room. I'm hitting the road tomorrow. Yes, I'm making my way back to Western Australia. I'll be there on the 24th of February. I still have a lot of work to do before I get there. Very busy days ahead. I cannot wait to be on the ground in Perth again. I'm so excited. I'm bringing Mr. Liberty with me. He has never been to WA before. This will be his first time. So I'm so excited to show him the place I call my home. Such a beautiful state. The beaches, the West Coast sunsets, the people, the atmosphere, the city, the places you can go, like Margaret River, the Broome. I wish I could get up to Broome. It's just incredible up there. Honestly, I cannot wait. I'm sorry I've been away so long. I didn't think that when I left back in March last year, headed for Queensland, Townsville, that I would be detoured back to Melbourne, back home to Napaby, then across to America out of the blue. Was not planned. Stayed there longer because of the opportunities I had when I met Mr. Liberty, who took me on a wild adventure, or I took him on a wild adventure, but managed to stay in America longer than I planned. And then back to Victoria. I've been to New South. I've been in South Oz. I'm finally coming home. So I will see everyone. I will be out on the ground campaigning, especially in Secret Harbour with Jim Matters, the legalised cannabis candidate. He's fantastic. I'll be on the ground with him. I'll be posting where I'll be if you want to come meet me, or Jim, who's the candidate. But I'll let people know where I'll be in case anybody wants to. Maybe I'll do a politics at the pub night because I'm not doing my bloody town hall because of all the drama. Maybe I'll just put a politics at the pub night, invite anyone who wants to come have a chat. I'll see if anybody wants me to do that. Let me know. And yes, thank you for joining me. Thank you for your patience. Sorry I missed last night again. I'm back on my feet and I'll keep fighting. And I'll see you soon, WA. Hope you're ready for the return of Lady Liberty.